Hi everybody, this is Rabbi David Fohrman, and welcome to Parshat Vayigash. You are watching Aleph Beta. We've been wondering about this question: could there be such thing as non-prophetic communication between God and man, and what would it look like? We've been looking at Yosef's interpretation of Paro's dream as a possible model. If you haven't seen the last couple weeks' Parsha videos, I recommend you go back and take a look. But what we noticed last week is that in the run-up to Pharaoh's retelling of his dream to Joseph, the events that have taken place seem to mirror events that took place 13 years earlier, back when Joseph was thrown into a pit. As a matter of fact, the events that are taking place now seem to be the reverse of those events, both in chronological order and in the significance of events. Everything that happened back then, the opposite is happening now. And we ask, does that pattern continue as Pharaoh begins to tell his dream? Vayidaber Paro al Yosef. So Pharaoh says to Joseph, Bechalomi, in my dream, Hineni omed al sfat hayor, I was standing by the side of the river. Vihine min hayor olot sheva parot briot basar. And then out of the river came these 7 beautiful cows, v'yafot toar. They were beautiful of form. If you're Yosef, what would yafot toar remind you of? There's only 2 people in the entire 5 books of Moses ever described as Yafat Torah v'Yafat Mareh, or Yafei Torah v'Yafei Mareh. It's Joseph himself and Rachel, Joseph's mother. So if you're Yosef, you're thinking, oh my goodness, these cows, I know they remind me of my mother. They remind me of me. This is really weird. What are they, Yosef cows? Rachel cows? But let's continue. Vatir'ena ba'achu. Ro'eh can mean to shepherd, or it can mean to graze, depending upon whether you're talking about a person or whether you're talking about an animal. Here we're talking about an animal. So these 7 beautiful cows, they were grazing. But where were they grazing? They were grazing in an achu. Well, what's an achu? Turns out that the word never appears elsewhere in the entire 5 books of Moses. Well, Rashi guesses that it means swamp. So these 7 beautiful cows, they were grazing in the swamplands next to the river. But you can imagine that there might be another possible interpretation of the word. And in fact, there is. Onkelos, an even earlier commentator than Rashi, translates it differently. Aleph, Chet, Vav, Echav. The other way of reading this is Vatir'ena be'echav. They were grazing with their brother cows. These 7 beautiful cows. They had other cows too. Remember the ugly cows? They were grazing with their brother cows. But if you're Yosef, what would that remind you of? Remember, ro'eh, resh, ayin, hey can mean 2 things depending on who the subject is. If it's talking about people, it doesn't mean graze, it means shepherd. Now what does it remind you of? The Yafot Torah cows, those Rachel cows, the Yosef cows. They were shepherding with their brothers. Was Yosef ever shepherding with his brothers? Yes! That's the very first verse of the Yosef story. Before Yosef was thrown in the pit, before he was stripped of his clothes, before his father sent him away, before he had those dreams, before all that, Yosef ben Shvas Reshana, he was 17 years old, Hayaroeh, he was shepherding, et Echav, with his brothers, Batzon, the sheep. So it's crazy, right? I mean, there are these 2 sets of cows. So these Yosef cows, and then these brother cows. I mean, if we're right, then those brother cows, those ugly cows, right? Who would those be? They'd be the children of Leah cows. But you know, that sounds pretty far-fetched. You're telling me these were Leah cows? Is there any other evidence for this? Does the text give us any further indication that this might be so? It turns out that it does. Pharaoh keeps on speaking, Vihine sheva parot acherot alot achreihen. So after this, 7 really ugly cows came out of the river too. Ra'ot toar, they were really ugly. V'rakot basar, they were thin and gaunt. Rakot, where have you heard that before? Spelled differently, but it's a homonym. Phonetically, it's the same sounds. The only other time it's used describes a woman. The only physical description we ever get of Leah is the Einei Leah Rakot. Her eyes were thin, or her eyes were soft. They really are Leah cows. Rachel cows and Leah cows grazing together. If you're Yosef, it's like, this is my life. But then continue with Pharaoh's dream, because the next event that happens must have made Yosef's blood run cold. The next thing that Pharaoh says is that the ugly cows devour alive the beautiful ones. Now, if you're Yosef, what are you thinking now? When did that happen in your life? It's the disappearance of the Rachel child. It's the pit. The realization must have hit Yosef like a ton of bricks. I dreamt that my brothers would come bowing to me, but that's not what happened. Pharaoh's dream is what happened. Those brothers, the children of Leah, they swallowed me alive. And then listen to what Pharaoh says. The ugly cows don't even look any different after swallowing the beautiful cows. They look exactly the same. It's the perfect crime. I was gone without a trace. I vanish, and the brothers come back to father looking exactly like they did before. And Yosef is wiped clean off the map of the family. This dream, it retells his life. But now let's stand back and think about all this. It's a very intriguing theory, but there's only one problem with it. It's a problem that actually must have bothered Yosef too, if Yosef had seen these patterns. It's the number of cows. You see, if those beautiful cows really represent my mother, they're Yefot Torah cows, or they represent me, Yosef, there shouldn't have been 7 of them. There should be 1 of them, maybe 2 of them. And if the ugly cows, if they represent the children of Leah, there shouldn't have been 7 of them either. I only have 6 brothers from the children of Leah. Why 2 sets of 7? 7 cows and 7 cows. So let's go back to one verse that actually is the key to interpreting Pharaoh's dream. It's the verse back in Parshat Vayetze that gives the physical descriptions of Rachel and Leah. Ve'enei Leah rakot, the eyes of Leah were soft or were thin. V'Rachel hayta yifat toar v'yifat mareh, and Rachel was beautiful of form and of beautiful appearance. Yifat toar, rakot, right there in one verse. It's the key for Joseph to understand how everything in the dream mirrors his own life. And now, the very next words, Vayehav Yaakov et Rachel, and Yaakov loved Rachel. Vayomer, so he said to Lavan, E'evadcha sheva shanim berachel bitcha ktana. I'll work for you for 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. He worked for 7 years. But Rachel was switched under the chuppah for Leah, so he worked another 7 years and got both Rachel and Leah. 2 sets of 7 years. And so it finally dawns on Yosef. The cows are years. The beautiful cows don't represent me or my mother. The ugly cows don't represent my brothers, the children of Leah. The 2 sets of cows, they represent years, the years that my father worked for Rachel and for Leah. When I was out in the fields shepherding with my brothers, we were the fruits of those years. It was as if the 7 long years that my father worked for Rachel, they were out in the fields those years, shepherding with the 7 long years that my father worked for Leah. And when they swallowed me, it's like one set of years swallowed the other. It was like my father had worked for naught for those 7 years for Rachel, because the fruits of those years, I vanished. And then Joseph understands, yes, Pharaoh, the dream means something for me, but it also means something for you. The dream is telling me about my past life, and I connect the dots of that life until I come to the inexorable conclusion. I understand what the cows are, and then I understand what the dream means for you. Your life is all about Egypt's welfare. The dream means something for you too. There's going to be 7 beautiful years. Those are the 7 beautiful cows, and there's going to be 7 terrible years. The years of famine will make us forget there were ever even 7 wonderful years. We'd better start saving now. And so it actually seems true. God is using Yosef's life as the key that unlocks the meaning of Pharaoh's dream. When Pharaoh's talking to Yosef, God is speaking too, but only Yosef can understand. It turns out, though, that as remarkable as this is, there is yet a third layer of meaning in Pharaoh's dream. Because as we've seen, on the one hand, the dream refers to Joseph's past, and once Joseph understands that, he can connect the dots and understand the meaning of the dream for Pharaoh's present. But I also believe that once Joseph understands the meaning of the dream for Pharaoh's present, it unlocks the meaning of Joseph's future. He won't be able to understand it yet, but 9 years later he will. Let's go back to the interpretation that Joseph gives Pharaoh of this dream. In essence, he told Pharaoh, do not despair in your dream. The fact that the ugly cows swallow the beautiful cows, it doesn't mean that we're doomed, that the famine is destined to wipe us out. We can survive because those beautiful cows, just because no one remembers them, doesn't mean they can't have an impact. They have a job to do. The job of the beautiful cows, the beautiful years, is to sustain everyone, despite the fact that no one remembers them. During the years of famine, you're going to ask your average Egyptian on the street, do you remember the good years? He's going to say, what good years? All I remember is starvation. But the crust of bread that he's holding in his hand, the good years are keeping him alive, even though they're forgotten. The good cows can still have an impact, even after they've vanished. The beautiful cows, the beautiful years, have to give their bounty to the bad years, to the gaunt cows. Then they've done their job. 9 years later, his brothers will show up at his door in Egypt. They do not recognize him, but Joseph recognizes them. And Joseph's first response is Vayitnaker aleihem. He estranges himself from them. He wants to have nothing to do with them. He's going to send them home. But then something happens. Vayizkor Yosef et hachalamot. Joseph remembered the dreams. Maybe one of the dreams he remembered was this dream, Pharaoh's dream. And if he did, he would have remembered how that dream characterized the people standing in front of him now. They're the Rakot cows. They're the products of the gaunt cows, the gaunt years. And in the language of the dream, who is he, Yosef? The product of the Yifat Torah cows, the beautiful years. And what did he tell Pharaoh the job of the beautiful cows, the beautiful years are? To sustain the terrible years. The job of the beautiful cows is to take care of the ugly ones. He looks at the brothers, and as angered as he is, as chagrined as he is, he stays in conversation with them, and when he sends them home with food. When the brothers come back again, he sends them home with food. And when he finally reveals himself, the first thing he says is, don't be upset about what happened. I know why God put me here, to sustain you. How did he know that? He knew it from Pharaoh's dream. He hears about his own past in that dream. He sees the meaning of Pharaoh's present in that dream. And finally, he understands the meaning of his future, why God put him there to take care of his brothers. Look at the kindness of Yosef. Kindness is one of those things that makes you feel all fuzzy inside, but sometimes chesed, kindness, doesn't make you feel warm. What happens when someone's estranged from you and your own family, when they've forgotten about you? When you don't matter to them, but then, years later, they're in need. Can you find it within yourself to take care of them? Anonymously, when they don't even know who you are. Yosef fulfills not just warm, fuzzy kindness, but the painful kind too. And now let's come back to the question we started with. How, if at all, does God speak to us in the absence of prophecy? Is there a way that God can speak without speaking? I think we've seen that there is. There does seem to exist non-prophetic communication. And now I ask you, might it be that even in our own day and age, when we have no prophecy, that we have that too? God speaking without speaking. I cannot prove it to you, but I'll speculate with you. After 120 years, after we die, you go up to heaven, and you say to God, God, I prayed to you, I talked with you, and sometimes I wasn't really concentrating, but there were times that I really reached out to you, in moments of pain. Where were you? Where was your response? Did you ever say anything back to me? I wonder if God's answer might be, did you ever look at your life? Did you ever watch for the patterns? As you were going through events, that feeling of deja vu, that this has happened before, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, just this string of events, did that ever happen to you? It's like we have this private message board, me and you, this slate that no one else can understand, the set of our shared experiences, your life. It's the way I talk to you. And you may not always understand the messages that I'm writing out to you on this little blank slate that we have together. But you still have to learn how to listen. Even Joseph didn't understand immediately. It took him 9 years after he heard all this to finally really understand. And you too, you may not understand. But you understand enough sometimes to know it's not a coincidence. To know that I'm tapping you on the shoulder. And even if you don't know what I mean, if you know that I'm speaking to you, sometimes that's enough. It's almost like we all have this private communication channel with the divine. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we really don't. But the slate is our own lives. It's a personal kind of language that means something only to us, the same way Pharaoh's dream meant something only to Joseph. The communication comes from the most unlikely of sources. Who would have thought that God speaking to Joseph was less through his own dreams than through Pharaoh's? But Joseph was wise enough to hear the echoes resonate in his life, to discern the voice of God. Maybe we can pick up a little bit of that wisdom too, and be ready to hear his voice in the most unlikely of places. Join me next week and I'll continue to explore some of the personal implications of this just a bit further with you.
Hi YouTube, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And for even more amazing Torah videos, check out aleph-beta.org. Just click the link below.